There was a houseboy we had at home. So there are things he did to me that were not good. So he sodomized me. Back in class 6, class 5, there's a time I remember my folks had separated. So under all this, there was a houseboy we had at home. So there are things he did to me that were not good. So he sodomized me once and all. So from there, just grew that there was just that bitterness of life. I couldn't trust anyone. So most of the things that were happening in my life, I couldn't tell it to any other person. I had to keep it to myself. So booze was the only thing that could give me comfort. Every time I felt low, I went to drinking. So from the drinking, I started smoking. I remember one time when I was in Form 2, Form 3, I started sneaking out of school, going to buy liquor, and then bringing them back with these jerrycans, the 20-liter jerrycans, and selling them to other students. The first time I got caught, I remember I got expelled from school. And this tendency just continued, finishing Form 4, because my drinking started as a hobby. I thought drinking was the hype thing back then. So due to the company I used to work with, the drinking continued. After Form 4, I didn't pass that well. So I remember my dad was not happy with me, because growing up, we were brought up in that way of we must compete. For my sibling, I have an older brother. He's sharp. I remember he was the third best student in Nyanza province back in the days. Form 4, I got an A minor. So imagine you had to race to get to a standard that was higher than that. Not people not caring about your personality, who you really are. So growing up in that kind of a way, it got to me, and I tried, all my life I tried looking for approval, seeking for approval from every person I got. So I wasn't living my life, I was living their life, what they wanted me to be. So with all this burden and the feeling of like, have you ever felt like you're at home but really not at home? I felt like I was displaced in my own home. So with this, I continued drinking. Got into college, the drinking went on and became a habit. Until back in 2014, when I lost my mom. So when I lost my mom, the drinking now became heavier, and to a capacity I couldn't control it. The mood swings, I became another person. So my parents couldn't understand me, my brother couldn't understand me, my relatives, none of them understood me. Because the Kibe they knew was no longer Kibe, it was somebody else. Without now knowing who to talk to, and in the past, the people I trusted with what I was bearing back then, they disappointed me. So I had to put and keep everything to myself. So the drinking went on. It got to a point, I remember, at the age of 24, I was blessed, and I was a manager of a company, my dad's company. But the drinking and everything just continued, and I spoiled the relationship I had with him. So later on, Corona came. When Corona came, I had a girlfriend who I loved so much. She was always there for me, because she started being there when I had nothing, when I was not anyone. I was nothing to be called a person. So she tried doing everything she could. But because of the drinking and everything, it got to a point we had to call it quits. Because you couldn't, how can you manage someone else if you can't manage yourself? It became difficult. So we split. I looked for another house, started living another life, of which the life I was living was another total lie.
Let me cut you short. Yeah. By the time you were sodomized by your houseboy, get any courage to share with any family member?
How could I share with any person when the people who are close to me, I didn't really trust them? Because there is a part of what happened to my parents. Most of it was played by people who are close to me, for them to be separated. The name callings and everything. So how can you go and talk to such people? Because to me it felt like me talking out my issues was giving them just another topic to share and to laugh about. So it was better for me to keep to myself, not knowing that I was harming myself.
Did the act happen once or it was done several?
It happened once. Because after it happened, I started changing and my friends in school noticed. So luckily, just as children talk, and the way people, you know how cheeky children are, so sometimes they experiment on things. So I learned what happened to me wasn't supposed to happen to a guy. It was something meant for something else. So after knowing all this, I couldn't talk it out because I was hurting and I felt like talking it out will show my nakedness to the world. So I had to keep it to myself. So this is where my pain started, and the drinking and the comfort from the drinking was just awesome to me at that time. So after losing my girlfriend and losing mostly everything around me, I remember it got to a point I found myself in the streets. So people ask themselves, how can one become a chokora? How can one become a sweet man? It's because I stopped enjoying the drinking and became a slave to it. Everything, when it comes to business, I can think very fast of a business idea, implement it, and get money out of it. So it's not that I didn't get the cash. I used to get the cash. But my number one priority was alcohol, was smoking, was just getting high. Because I couldn't face the real me. I couldn't face my reality. So it was better for me living in my fantasy. So the drinking continued and it spoiled most of everything. The trust I had built with people, the relationships. So it got to a point I was all alone. And the loneliness took me to the streets because I couldn't pay my rent on time. I couldn't even feed myself. I couldn't even clothe myself. Because of that feeling of feeling hopeless. Feeling like you don't belong. So being in the streets for a couple of months, that's when I pulled myself together and went and faced my dad. Asked him if there is any possibility of me getting help. Me talking to him and him being my father and knowing my past, he wasn't for the idea because he just thought this was one of the other schemes of getting money out of him. So he had, the only statement that he gave me that I remember was, it was for me to find my balance. It was for me to get self-control over my drinking. So he wasn't understanding where I was coming from. So after a couple of days, that's when I went and faced my brother, my elder brother. I talked to him, told him about my drinking issues, my problems, and he tried understanding me. To the extent he did his research and got help. I remember we tried, first we tried Chiromo Rehab Center. For me, it wasn't working really because I was looking for somewhere where I felt like myself, where I could feel like, yes. So I asked him to continue doing his research. So that's when a friend of his had heard about Solomon Gitao Kelanga, the CEO of Greater Life Concern, GLC. And when he got to talk to Solomon, he sent him a couple of podcasts. And he sent them to me, so I had to listen to them. And after listening to the story that Solomon was talking about, I could relate. Because in my life, I never imagined myself in the streets. my life was planned, my life was organized, my life was awesome. And then all of a sudden, you're just out in the cold, all alone. Every time that you're sober, you just feel like running away from yourself. So I related to his story, and that's when I came to GLC. And after coming to GLC, I've learned so much in this place, because it reminded me of who Kibe was and the future I had in plan. So that's what I've been working through all the months that I've been here. And I've gotten rid of my past, my pains, my challenges. And right now, the reason why I feel that freedom of even expressing myself and talking about my story is to let that person out there to understand that there are people who are listening. It's good for parents to listen to their children, because that ear you give to that child will help them, and it will build something that this child will always have somewhere to run when they feel weak. They'll have that person to talk to, that hero to turn to when they feel like it's not possible to move on with life. So to parents out there, it's create that bond with your child. Create that relationship, that even that child will always be happy and tell others, like, I love my dad because we have that, I love my mom because we have that thing that even the deepest of secrets, my dad knows, my mom knows, and that helps. So trust your children once in a while and listen to them, because wisdom not only comes with age, wisdom also is God-given. So that's all I can say. The one thing I can tell the boy child is, as you have heard, TOB is here listening, GLC is always here. So you have every right to cry. If you have that feeling and that feeling is of tears, man, let it out. Let people know what you're feeling, because nobody can read your mind. Nobody can know if you're suffering or not, because the human being was made to be selfish. Most of us only think about ourselves. They never think about you. So unless you talk yourself out, nobody really cares what goes on. But when you talk, people listen, and people will respect you for the fact that you know how to talk about yourself. You know your boundaries, you know your principles. You know, because when you learn to talk, I believe that helps you to build a character. And character is the most important thing to any man, because a man is not a man because of keeping quiet and handling your own things alone. No man is an island. The reason why God created so many of us was to us to learn to coexist with each other. For my talents to be of help to you, so that we can build a brighter and good tomorrow rather than what we have right now. So that's what I can tell the boy child.